Hey singers, it's Sound Guy Barry, and I want you to sound great. And a big part of sounding great is working well with the audio system, because your audience at any sizable show can't hear you directly. All they can hear is the audio system and how well it's picking up your performance. And so we want to make the best use of our vocal microphones so the sound system can do its best to deliver your performance. And a big part of that is controlling the distance between you and the microphone. And so in this episode, I'm going to talk about the optimal distance to be from your vocal microphone. And what should that be? Well, if you ask a lot of sound techs, you'll probably get a lot of answers. One sound tech might say, well, according to science, it should be exactly 3.71 inches from your mouth to the microphone. Okay. I was asked at a live show this question, and to give a quick answer, I said, make a fist, put it on your chin, put the microphone about that far away. You should be pretty good. Somewhere in that range. That'd be good. Some people will put the microphone right up against their lips, so they're almost touching the grill. As a sound tech, I'm fine with that. That works for me. You don't want to be too far away, though. Mic like this on a live stage, a foot, 2 feet away. In most situations, I'd say that's a little too far. Now, you often see people really close to microphones like this. But a microphone like this, a studio mic, you almost never see somebody close talking that mic. They're usually half a foot, 2 feet away. And it has nothing to do with the microphone. It has to do with the situation. So consider this. If you have a friend who's saying, hey, I want to let you check out this new guitar lick I learned, or drum beat, or this piece on a violin. Come here and let me play that for you. Are you going to scurry on up there and put your ear right into the speaker of their Marshall amp? Or right on top of that snare drum head? Or right against the violin that they're about? No. You're going to be back a ways. And so, where is the best place to listen to a drum kit? Probably about 5 or 6 feet back from the kit. Because if you're right on top of the kit, well, it's going to be ear-splittingly loud. But it's also not going to sound completely balanced and right. And same thing for the guitar or violin or any musical instrument. You want to get back a little ways so that that sound can build and envelop and fill its space and become full and whole. And same thing with your vocals. Your vocals aren't going to sound perfect and best and right immediately in front of you. You probably sound better a foot back or so. And so wouldn't that be the better place to put the mic? A little ways away so that it can get the entire vocal sound, because it's not just your vocal cords that are making the sound, but it's the shape of your head and the absorption characteristics of your body. And so you want to get back just a little bit of distance so that all of that can work together to build your whole cohesive vocal sound. And so if I'm in a really good studio, a professional, high-quality studio where we've spent a whole bunch of money on acoustical treatment, and the room has very controlled reflections and reverberation, in that sort of situation, I can get back a ways from the microphone and still have the microphone hear primarily direct sound coming from me rather than reflected sound coming off of the room. And the reflected sounds from the room, they're worse than you think. You and I could stand in a room 12 feet apart and have a perfectly fine, easy to understand, clear conversation. But if I had a pocket recorder and I recorded that conversation and you're 12 feet back, and then later I play back that recording, it's going to sound like you were in a cave. And you'll sit here and think, my gosh, you sounded fine when I talked to you in the room, but playing back the recording, it sounds awful. It sounds distant and echoey. And that's because we have two ears and a brain, and the brain can do sophisticated checks of the timing of sounds coming into our two ears and determine which sounds are direct sounds from the source that we're interested in, and which ones are extraneous noise and just reflections in the background and stuff that isn't helping our understanding of the conversation and that isn't helping us. And our brain automatically attenuates a lot of that background echo and reverb that is naturally occurring in the spaces that we're in, and we don't even perceive it, but it's there, and microphones hear it. And so when the microphone records that same situation in the room and you play back the recording, you hear the sound as it really is, not as your brain perceives it, and it's much more echoey than your brain perceives. And so if we're in a really good studio space that doesn't have much of that reverb and echo, we can be a ways back from the mic and still get a great vocal pickup. But if we're in our basement where we've hung a couple moving blankets and we're calling it a studio, we can't be so far away from the mic, otherwise we're going to get room noises. If you're on a live stage and I've got guys with guitar amps right behind me and Godzilla on the drums just a few feet back, that's a lot of noise that can be picked up by this microphone, and the microphone needs to hear our vocals head and shoulders in level above all of that cacophony so we can get a clean and clear vocal signal into the mixing board so we can do a good presentation to the audience. And so I'd like to be a couple feet back in order to get the most pristine, ideal vocal sound, but that just can't happen with all of the background noise or if we're in a room that's less than ideal. So I need to get progressively closer to the microphone to make sure that the sound that I'm trying to pick up is much louder and level than all of the background splash that I really don't want to pick up. And so for that reason, when you're in an environment which is a less than acoustically ideal environment, or you have background noise, we need to get closer to the mic. And my advice on a live stage playing rock and roll or country or other amplified music is that you want to get about as close to this mic as you can comfortably be. If your lips are touching the grill, I'm okay with that. Maybe you want to be just a little bit off the grill, but be close, be real close. Now, one of the issues with being really close to the mic is that small variations in distance are going to equate to large variations in output level. So, if you're going to be close to the mic especially, you need to stay that distance and not be moving around too much. Otherwise, your level is going to be shifting all over the place. And here's something that I see a lot of singers do, and as a expert sound engineer, I'd rather they didn't. And that is, they'll be pretty close to the mic, and then when they sing loud and they really belt it out, they kind of back off the mic and let it rip, and then they get back in tight again when they're done. So they try to control their volume by modulating the mic distance as they sing. There are some singers who are really pretty talented at knowing just where to put that mic in order to control the volume. There are some. There aren't many, not too many. And there's a lot of people who think they're pretty good at it, and they're not. And so if this is something that you're doing and you haven't actually practiced it while looking at the VU meter, I'd say you're probably not as good at it as you think you are. And if you're not working with a sound technician, you are mixing the band from stage by yourself, or if your sound tech's qualifications are that he just happened to be somebody's brother, well, maybe you've got to do some of this modulation to control your level. But if you're working with someone like me, I'd prefer if you don't do that. Or if that's just such a ingrained habit you can't resist, try doing less. Try to cut those motions in half or more. So, okay, if you have to move back a little bit, do that because it makes you feel good. But I'd rather you didn't. So if you have to do it, just do it a little bit. Don't get crazy with it. Because you see, it's a nonlinear relationship. The distance from here to here, that's a big output difference. But once you're at this point, that same amount of movement, not so much, and it gets even less out here. And so if you're close talking the mic, very minute differences can make some pretty big differences in gain level. But what about the gain shifts, you might say? Well, as a sound tech, I've got some control over that. I can either be riding the fader and watching you and watching the meters, but more likely, I have a compressor on your channel. And when I mix bands, I set the compressor so that it's doing just a little bit of gain reduction as you're singing normally. Just a touch, just barely touching that compressor. And I've got the timing of the compressor set up so that it can jump in and control those peaks pretty quickly and release at the right speed so that it all sounds natural and nobody's the wiser and nobody can hear that compressor working, but it is keeping your level in check. And so the compressor is sort of always riding a little bit of gain on your microphone channel to keep the band level and your vocal levels more or less consistent and keep the band having a nice, consistent mix. Now, when you decide to just let it rip and belt it out, the compressor is going to jump into action and it's going to start pushing the level down as you're going up. And it's set up so that it does allow you to raise your volume some. So it doesn't just crunch the dynamics out of your singing, but it does keep it under control and still in the pocket in the mix. And so my advice is keep the microphone where it's at and just sing. Don't worry about the mic. Let me worry about the mic. And I've got fine control over the volume if you just do your thing. Don't try to do this microphone positioning business and throw complexity into the mix, because my compressors can handle it. I got you. Now, the problem is when you start moving the microphone, especially if you've been really close to the mic and you move back a ways, that's a huge level shift. And you might be able to move that mic faster than my compressor is allowed to kick in and really control it. And so I'm trying to control your volume shifts and this business at the same time. And, well, it's just adding complexity and making it more difficult to give you a clean, consistent mix. So don't be moving the mic around too much. And so if you're on a live stage, I'd suggest you stay pretty darn close to the mic. If you can be real close and consistent, that's great. If you have some problems maintaining a really close distance, and especially if your band isn't extremely loud on stage and you can get away with it, move back just a little bit, like a fist's worth, Because that way minor differences in positioning on the mic aren't going to be quite so dramatic in terms of level shifting. And so that might work better. But don't be moving the mic around forward and back as you sing. If you can avoid it, try to maintain consistent distance so you have consistent volume. Another couple quick tips is if you're going to hand hold the microphone by the handle down here. Now, it's okay if your lips are touching the front of the grill and you're singing into that, but don't touch the back side of the grill if you can avoid it. This isn't just for decorative purposes. The microphone is designed to hear sound coming into the back side of the grill. And this is a tuned instrument like a musical instrument. And so a musical instrument, you can't cover up the sound hole in a guitar and have it sound right. These are holes that are designed with the microphone to make the microphone sound right. So if you grab onto the microphone like this and cover up a bunch of that backside of the grill, well, that's not how this microphone was engineered to work. And so it's going to throw off the sound of the microphone. Not so good. Worse yet, if you glam onto the whole head of it like this and start singing into here, that's going to sound terrible. Sound techs don't generally like that too much unless it's really a stylized part of your show and you need that horrible bullhorn type distorted mic sound. So don't do this. Don't do this. The other problem with doing this is that In addition to controlling the sound quality, the microphone is designed to take in sounds from the backside or the rear and use that as an acoustical input to cancel out the sounds coming in from the backside or the rear. So if you start covering up the grill of the microphone, that's making this microphone less directional. Like this, the microphone is most sensitive off the front and not so sensitive off the sides and the rear. But all bets are off once you start grabbing the grill like this. Now the microphone becomes more omnidirectional and more sensitive to things coming off the sides and the rear. And there are things off the sides and the rear that we would rather not have come into the microphone, such as extraneous noise from the drum kit and guitars and other things on stage that will compete with your vocals so that you don't sound so clean and clear coming through the mix. Or worse yet, sounds from your stage monitors or maybe even the main speakers. And so by grabbing the microphone and doing this business, you're probably inching yourself a lot closer to a condition where you're likely to experience feedback from the loudspeakers. And nobody likes feedback because it sounds horrible, it's distracting, and as the sound tech, I hate the sound of it. I know it's jarring, and it can also damage loudspeakers. And so blowing a speaker at a show is a real bummer, and you either get to finish out the show with a blown tweeter, which is no fun, and then after the show I get to repair and replace that tweeter, which probably takes up a good chunk of the earnings for the night, so that's no fun. So we really try to avoid feedback, and doing this business will get you a lot closer to feedback than holding the microphone as it was intended. So a couple of quick tips for you. How far back to be from the microphone? In a real studio, I like to be a ways back to really get the best, most ideal vocal sound. But on a live stage, we have to be a whole lot closer just because of the circumstances, so we can get your vocals so much louder into this microphone than all of the cacophony around you. We get a nice, clean, clear signal that we can mix and make you pop out in the overall band mix and sound great. So there isn't one exact answer for how many inches or centimeters back you should be from the mic. It's all dependent on situation, and those are some of the factors that come to my mind when I'm trying to make that decision. And so I hope the tip serves you well, and I hope that it helps you to sound great. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you again on another upcoming episode.